The importance of body movement. What if I told you that your thoughts are not the problem, but your stillness is? That the chaos you feel isn't rooted in confusion of the mind, but in the stagnation of a sacred mechanism at the base of your spine? In the hidden chambers of ancient temples, where only the initiated dared enter, the elders would whisper, "That which does not move cannot evolve." And yet, here we are, chasing mental clarity while our bodies remain trapped in rigid patterns. No mantra, no sacred text, no crystal will shift your frequency if the vessel that holds your energy remains inert. The modern world reveres cognition and forgets embodiment. But the ancients knew that movement was not just physical, it was a form of invocation, a dialogue with the energy cosmica that breathes life into the unseen. There is a bone, silent, powerful, and overlooked. The sacrum, often dismissed in modern anatomy as a structural support, was once seen as the keystone of manifestation by those who understood the hidden architecture of being. In Sanskrit, it's referred to in the context of Kundalini. In Egyptian symbology, it was the invisible root of the Jed pillar, representing stability and awakening. This isn't coincidence. Across cultures and centuries, the same symbol appears, pointing to this exact place in the body, as if whispering through the veil of time. The Sabidoria Ancestral speaks not in loud proclamations, but in patterns. And here, at the base of your being, lies one of the most guarded patterns of transformation. When the sacrum remains still, a cascade of energetic stagnation follows. Emotions get trapped, visions grow dull, and the body becomes a house of echoes rather than a cathedral of light. Have you noticed how anxiety often feels like a pressure with no direction? Or how depression feels like a gravity pulling you inward, downward? The mysterious occultos of the body teach us that movement is the language of release. Just as rivers cleanse the earth by flowing, so too does the sacred current within us require motion to renew itself. When the body is frozen, so is the spirit. And when the sacrum sleeps, your reality does too. But let's not mistake movement for exercise. What we speak of here is not performance, it's remembrance. The body, when moved with intention, becomes a vessel of alchemia interior. Every gesture becomes a glyph, every sway of the hips a sacred symbol etched in space. When we move the sacrum with awareness, we are not just stretching muscles, we are unlocking textos prohibidos written into the architecture of the flesh. There's a reason these teachings were never taught openly. Their power lies not in belief, but in direct experience, available only to those who dare to feel what most have learned to numb. This is not about becoming something new. It is about returning, about reawakening what was always there, waiting for you at the threshold of silence and sensation. You do not need to understand every mystical system or read every ancient manuscript to begin. You simply need to start where the ancients started. With the first movement, the doorway opens not with force but with rhythm, and the body, long ignored, begins to hum again with the vibration of energia cosmica. But before we uncover how this sacred bone became a portal forgotten, we must travel through time to civilizations that saw what we have chosen to forget. The sacrum, forgotten portal of transformation. Long before the sacrum was confined to anatomical charts and labeled with cold precision, it was revered as the seat of divine power, a bone so sacred that its very name still carries echoes of ancient reverence. Sacrum means sacred, and that is no linguistic accident. In the secret teachings of initiatic orders, the sacrum was the cradle of consciousness, the first bone to form in the womb and the last to surrender to decay. Why? Because it holds within it a vibrational memory, a resonance so primordial that even death cannot erase it. The Sabidoria Ancestral held this truth not as metaphor, but as reality. The body remembers, and the sacrum is its most faithful archivist. In the temples of Kemet, what we call ancient Egypt, the sacrum was never mentioned by name, but it was, symbolically encoded into the structure of the Djed pillar, the spine of Osiris. 4 horizontal lines stacked vertically, a symbol of stability, renewal, and resurrection. But behind its geometric simplicity was a deeper truth. It marked the hidden foundation of energetic ascent. This invisible column began at the base of the body, the sacrum, and rose like a ladder for the soul. Those who walked the path of the priesthood knew this was not metaphorical. They would engage in movements, breathwork, and sacred postures that activated this pillar from its root, awakening what modern language dares not define. To the Toltecs of ancient Mexico, the sacrum was referred to as the drum of consciousness. They believed that every human being was born with a silent drum inside, and that trauma, fear, and disconnection silenced its rhythm. The sacred dances, circular rituals, and rhythmic hip movements were all designed to make this drum sing again. Not just culturally, but energetically, they saw the body as a tuning instrument for higher awareness. Within the pulsing of the sacrum lay the key to synchronizing with the heartbeat of the universe, a direct communion with the energia cosmica that breathes stars into being and dissolves galaxies into silence. In Hermetic writings, often misinterpreted as metaphorical puzzles, the sacrum appears encoded as the hidden path of manifestation. These texts, often lost or labeled as heretical by dominant religious orders, speak of a mysterious base from which the light must rise, ascending through the spinal channel and reaching the crown only when the root is awakened. They did not begin their journey at the top. They began with the bones. The textos prohibidos of this tradition warn that ignoring the foundation is the surest way to spiritual delusion. A tower without a base collapses. A soul without embodiment drifts. The sacrum was the grounding stone of their entire cosmology. And yet in the modern world, this bone has been anesthetized, both physically and symbolically. It is reduced to a support beam, a passive component, when in truth it is a living altar. The mysterios occultos encoded in its shape, its density, its position within the body. These are not biological coincidences. They are signs left by the architects of the human form. The sacrum is not a tool, it is a threshold, and once crossed it begins to transform the very nature of perception. But to understand how the ancient and the modern now converge, we must journey into the realm where spirituality meets science, where inner alchemy begins to be validated by the pulse of data and the language of the nervous system. Science and spirituality converge for centuries. Mystics and sages were ridiculed for describing the body as a vessel of light, an antenna of the soul, a bridge between dimensions. Their words, once dismissed as poetic exaggerations, are now finding echoes in laboratories and neurological studies. It is as if the textos prohibidos, those fragments of suppressed knowledge, are being slowly rewritten in the language of science. What ancient seers once sensed through inner silence, modern instruments now measure. The sacrum, long considered spiritually potent, is now being observed as a central axis of biological intelligence. The paradox dissolves. The mystical and the measurable are not opposing forces, they are lovers rediscovering each other. At the center of this rediscovery lies conscious sacral movement, a practice that, when performed with precision and presence, triggers a cascade of physiological and energetic events. Studies in somatic neuroscience reveal that subtle movements at the base of the spine stimulate the flow of cerebrospinal fluid, a shimmering liquid that bathes the brain and spinal cord. This fluid has long been revered in yogic and Taoist traditions as the elixir of life, the inner moonlight that fuels awakening. The ancients had no microscopes, yet they knew movement of the sacrum reawakens the sacred tides within. These are not metaphors. These are mechanisms of alquimia interior disguised as myths. But the resonance does not end there. Modern studies confirm that sacral stimulation also activates the vagus nerve, a wandering messenger connecting brain, heart, and gut. This nerve is responsible for regulating emotional balance, intuitive insight, and the body's ability to heal through rest and connection. When this nerve is awakened, many experience a sudden stillness of thought, a deep peace, as if they had tapped into the rhythm of the cosmos itself. Is this not the same illuminação spiritual described by mystics across continents? Is this not the inner silence that opens portals beyond logic? What was once dismissed as mysticism is now being traced in neural pathways and pulse sensors. Furthermore, movement of the sacral region activates the lymphatic system, the silent river, of the body that purifies and protects. This purification process, invisible to the eye but deeply felt by the soul, is central to many ancient rites of initiation. Before one could receive divine knowledge, the body had to be cleansed, not just ritually, but vibrationally. This echoes the Sabadoria ancestral that taught, the vessel must be emptied before it can be filled with light. Science, in its clinical vocabulary, is confirming that detoxification and neural regulation are not abstract goals. They are energetic alignments guided by rhythm, breath, and awareness. These discoveries are not mere validations. They are bridges, sacred crossings that allow modern minds to reconnect with ancient truths. In this merging of disciplines, we begin to see the outline of a forgotten language, a language written in motion, vibration, and breath. But it is not enough to understand this intellectually. The sacrum does not respond to theory, it responds to participation. And so, the question emerges like a pulse from deep within. What happens when we move with sacred intent? To answer that, we must now unveil the 5 forgotten gestures, 5 sacred codes of movement that awaken the primal wisdom sealed within the bones. 5 movements for energetic release. Imagine that every gesture you make is a forgotten word in a language your soul used to speak. Movement is not just exercise, it is invocation, remembrance, and activation. The ancient temples did not echo with sermons alone. They pulsed with rhythm. Dancers, priests, initiates, they all moved in patterns charged with energia cosmica, each gesture a call to awaken the sacred forces buried in the bones. Today, you will recover 5 of these ancestral codes. They are not bound to any dogma. They require no robes, no altars, only awareness, only intention. These movements are the keys to the vault of your alquimia interior, the catalysts that shift perception from the mundane to the mystical. Horizontal figure 8 with the hips begin with the most ancient of symbols, the infinity loop. Smoothly guide your hips in a horizontal figure 8, as if tracing the symbol of eternity into the very air around you. This isn't a dance, it's a prayer. The pelvis, long locked by trauma and stillness, begins to thaw. As you move, feel the dormant currents stir beneath your skin. The Sabadoria ancestral teaches that this motion mimics the flow of the cosmos, the rotation of galaxies, the spiraling of energy through dimensions. Done slowly, it reawakens the foundational field of your being, reconnecting you to the earth and realigning your lower chakras without ever speaking their names. Vertical pelvic wave. Now shift. Rock your pelvis gently forward and backward, creating a vertical wave that travels through the sacrum to the spine. This is not about strength, it's about surrender. In this subtle oscillation, you reawaken the sacral pineal axis, a forgotten channel through which vision and presence are born. Ancient mystery schools knew of this connection, though they guarded it behind metaphors and textos prohibidos. Some called it the serpent's ascent, others the ladder of Jacob, but all pointed to the same truth. When the root and the crown align through breath and movement, a portal opens. That portal is you. Silent inner spiral. Now lie down. Close your eyes. Begin not with the body, but with imagination. Visualize a luminous spiral deep within your pelvis. Let it swirl, expanding gently with every breath. You're not imagining, you are remembering. This movement, though invisible, touches the subtlest strata of consciousness. The mysterios occultos of the body exist not in motion alone, but in awareness. Here in this spiral, you access cellular memory, the place where traumas, dreams, and archetypes sleep. The spiral has always been the symbol of transformation, from the DNA double helix to the galaxy's swirl. Move it within, and you stir what has long remained dormant. Rhythmic pulsation with breath, return to seated posture. Now synchronize gentle contractions of the pelvic floor with your breath. Inhale, engage. Exhale, release. Again. This pulsation, done with reverence, sends vibration upward through your spine. Some will feel warmth, others vision, but all who persist will find an activation of their perceptual circuits, the stirring of an inner fire often mistaken for imagination. In ancient Taoist texts, this was known as the Jade Gate breath. In Hermetic traditions, it was the moment the clay vessel trembled before the descent of spirit. Illuminação spiritual is not found in temples, it is birthed in pulses, in this sacred rhythm between bone and breath. Reconnection ritual. And finally, no movement becomes sacred without continuity. Create a small daily ritual, a space of 2 or 3 minutes where you honor your body with mindful movement. No choreography, just presence. As you explore these 5 gestures, you begin to sense that the sacrum is not a bone, it is a being, a guide, a forgotten oracle. This daily practice, done without effort or expectation, slowly retunes your system to a higher harmonic. You don't need belief, only presence. The cosmos doesn't demand your faith, only your participation. And as this rhythm takes root in your life, a question emerges not from the mind, but from the body itself. What ancient healing is unlocked when movement becomes devotion? Samuel's story. Healing through movement. His name was Samuel. Not a mystic, not a healer, not a seeker, just a man burdened by the silence of his own body. He had tried everything. Meditation apps, yoga classes, spiritual books that promised enlightenment in 7 steps, but none of them reached the place where the ache lived. It wasn't physical, and yet it screamed through his posture, his sleep, his voice. One night, he stumbled across a passage from a texto prohibido, one that spoke not of thought but of movement. It suggested that the key to shifting one's reality might lie in the forgotten rhythms of the sacrum. That evening, on his bedroom floor, he closed his eyes and began to move. At first, it felt absurd. Samuel swayed his hips in slow circles, mimicking the ancient figure 8 he had read about. There were no candles, no chants, only intention. But something unexpected began to stir. A warmth he couldn't name pulsed from the base of his spine. Not pleasure, not pain, something deeper. A current, a remembrance. The next day, he added the pelvic wave. The next, the breath pulse. Within a week, his dreams changed. Images flooded. Of temples, of spirals, of drums echoing beneath starlit skies. He didn't know where they came from, but they felt older than anything he had studied. They felt like truth. What Samuel didn't know was that he was accessing a sabiduria ancestral, one that bypasses intellect and speaks directly to the body's memory. The emotions that had once clung to him like shadows began to release, not through thought, but through sweat, breath, and tears. He cried, not because of pain, but because something within him finally moved. He later described it as if the sacrum itself had wept for being ignored. His posture shifted, his voice deepened. Friends began to comment on the calm that emanated. From him, though he never spoke of what he was doing. How could he? How does one explain mysterios occultos that reveal themselves only in motion? In time, Samuel no longer moved just to heal. He moved to remember. Each gesture became a ritual, a communion with what he once called creator mode. He discovered that the body doesn't lie, and that illuminação spiritual isn't a peak experience. It's a practice of presence. He began to teach, not by forming classes or recording videos, but by moving in public spaces without shame. People would pause, mesmerized not by the beauty of his motion, but by the energy it carried, that unnameable vibration. And that energia cosmica that resonates when someone has aligned inner and outer rhythm. Samuel's story is not unique. It is simply one that has been allowed to unfold. Many have felt the call, but few answer, not because they doubt the path, but because they fear what it might awaken. And yet, as his journey shows, when we begin to move with reverence, the body becomes more than flesh. It becomes scripture, a textos prohibidos made visible in gesture. And though his journey began alone on a bedroom floor, it now echoes through others, who see in him not a teacher, but a mirror. A reminder that their own sacral wisdom still waits, dormant, but never lost. Obstacles and conditioning. Why do so few move in the ways that awaken the sacral gate? The answer lies not in ignorance, but in conditioning. From childhood, we are taught to prioritize stillness over sensation, intellect over instinct, restraint over rhythm. The body becomes a prisoner of politeness, a silhouette molded by societal shame, especially the pelvis, shrouded in taboo, labeled inappropriate, disconnected from spiritual discourse. The Sabadoria ancestral, however, made no such divisions. In their world, the sacred was not above the waist. It pulsed in every curve, every breath, every tremor. Today, we carry a legacy of forgetting, and with it, a fear of what sacred movement might awaken. One of the greatest fears buried deep within us is not darkness, it's release. The idea that stored grief, forgotten joy, or unprocessed trauma might rise to the surface through movement is terrifying to a mind conditioned to stay in control. And yet, that very release is what the alchemia interior demands. True transformation requires surrender. The pelvis, home to ancient instincts and primal memory, becomes the vault we fear to open. Not because we don't believe there's something inside, but because we know there is. We sense that to move consciously is to open that vault and let the past breathe through the present. This resistance isn't just personal, it's cultural. Spirituality in the modern world has been sterilized, intellectualized, detached from the wisdom of the body. We read books on ascension while ignoring the densest part of ourselves. We chase illuminação spiritual with our eyes fixed on the stars, never realizing that the root of that light begins at the base of our spine. The mysterios occultos were hidden not in temples, but in the sinews of our very being. And the deeper paradox is this: that which we fear to move is precisely what holds the key to the liberation we seek. Complexity became a distraction, simplicity a threat. But here lies the invitation to begin small. 1 minute a day, a simple breath, a gentle tilt, a whispered spiral. This isn't about choreography, it's about listening. The body, when met without judgment, begins to speak, first in pulses, then in rhythms, then in knowing. You don't need to heal everything at once. The energia cosmica doesn't demand perfection, it responds to presence. Each small movement breaks a link in the chain of forgetting. Each act of intention reclaims a piece of your original design. And so, movement becomes medicine, not prescribed, not forced, simply remembered. And as you begin this journey, you may find the greatest revelation of all: that your body was never your enemy. It was never a burden to transcend or a mistake to fix. It was the textos prohibidos, hidden in plain sight, the living manuscript of your sacred path. The sacrum, long silenced, begins to hum again, calling not just for movement, but for reverence. But to truly understand where this path leads, we must now return to the beginning, to the body itself, not as a tool but as a portal, the final and most overlooked gateway to awakening. The body is the portal. In the end, all roads of awakening converge upon a single truth. The body was never just the beginning, it is the destination. It holds the very mysteries that sages once crossed deserts to uncover. The sacrum, silent and patient, has waited for you not in some faraway dimension, but within your own skin. It was never about escaping the body to reach the divine. It was about descending fully into it. The sabiduria ancestral encoded in bones, fascia, and breath is not symbolic, it is literal. Your body is the last temple, the final manuscript, the keeper of textos prohibidos that were etched into form before language was born. When you begin to move consciously, the veil between spiritual theory and embodied truth dissolves. You are no longer chasing signs, you become the sign. The mysterios occultos once confined to dusty scrolls or whispered chants now pulse in your heartbeat, in your breath, in the rhythm of your hips. And in that motion, something awakens, not an external deity, but the part of you that always knew. The sacrum does not speak in words, it speaks in vibrations, and when it vibrates with awareness, the cosmos listens. What once felt fragmented becomes whole. What once seemed distant now dances within you. You may begin to sense it. A gentle power moving through your spine, guiding your thoughts not upward, but inward. No longer are you a seeker. You become a vessel. The illuminação spiritual you longed for no longer appears as a blinding light, but as a subtle warmth, a presence within that needs no validation. The alchemia interior does not erupt like a volcano. It unfolds like dawn, and with it comes clarity that the rituals, the movements, the breath, none of them are separate. They are one gesture, one sacred act repeated across dimensions to awaken the original spark. And yet, the paradox remains. Something so powerful, so ancient was always available. It required no belief system, no guru, no pilgrimage. Just movement, just attention. In that simplicity lies its secrecy. The energia cosmica does not demand obedience, it invites resonance. And when the sacrum becomes the tuning fork of your being, your life begins to harmonize with the frequencies that shape reality itself. This isn't magic, it's memory. A sacred muscle remembering the song it was born to sing. So now, the question is not what should I do, but how will I move? The portal is open, the body is listening, and the sacrum, long silenced, is ready to speak through you. But before you begin, before you sway, spiral, or pulse, anchor this truth in your bones. When I move the sacrum, my reality responds. And with that knowing, you are not just moving your body, you are moving creation itself. The hidden force you've been ignoring. What if the reason your reality feels stuck isn't in your mind but in your spine? You've repeated the affirmations, meditated in silence, read every sacred book and surrounded yourself with crystals, but something still doesn't shift. Something remains, locked. What if I told you that the real key was not in what you think, but in what you haven't moved? There is a sacred bone hidden at the base of your body, so potent, so ancient, that entire civilizations built their spiritual sciences around its vibration. And yet today it lies forgotten. Not because it lost its power, but because we stopped listening. The ancients called it the throne of the soul, the foundation of creation, the gate to the energia cosmica. Modern science barely speaks of it, but mystics never stopped feeling its pulse. In this video, you'll discover 5 secret movements, not exercises, but gestures of awakening that reactivate this portal and unlock your inner alquimia interior. These movements are drawn from Sabiduría Ancestral, encoded in textos prohibidos, and confirmed now by both mystical experience and modern research. You'll meet Samuel, a man who healed not through words, but through rhythm, and you'll begin to see your body not as a cage, but as the map to your own liberation. If you're tired of spiritual theory and ready to feel transformation at a cellular level, stay until the end. Because once you unlock the sacrum's forgotten pulse, nothing around you or within you will ever feel the same again. Like, comment, and share this video to awaken those who've been asleep for far too long. Let the collective rhythm rise again. Movement is the message. Now that you've witnessed the forgotten language of the sacrum, its rhythms, its codes, its immense silent power, I leave you with one question. What other sacred truths are still hidden in your body, just waiting to be moved? Let this knowledge settle, not in your mind, but in your hips, in your breath, in the way you walk through the world. If this message stirred something within you, do not keep it to yourself. Someone else may need this awakening too. Share this video, subscribe for more revelations, and comment below. When I move the sacrum, my reality responds. You are not just watching transformation, you are becoming it.